This is National Chess Master, rats. I'm giving a simul. I'm just starting the recording. There's a number of games going on. Here, just started this game. And, okay, so essentially I'm pretty much sticking with my King's Indian attack that I use just to experiment with an opening, have something you folks can learn. It gives white an equal game. It's very drawish. It doesn't really yield much of an advantage, but if you get used to playing the same system, you avoid everything black's prepared. And, blacks can equalize against anything anyway. So here he kind of broke the system. I usually like to bring my bishop out to g5, but knight never got to f6. Let me just show you that. He played kind of an unusual move, d4. This opens up the diagonal for my light squared bishop, so I'm kind of happy about this because often the way I've been playing the system, I put the pawn on e4, and this bishop doesn't really give a whole lot to white, but it's a piece. And here, by pushing d4, he also gives me the c4 square, so my objective is to anchor that square down for a knight. Now, question, where is he planning to castle, kingside or queenside? Well, if I play knight c4, he can't castle queenside because there's a trick, bishop g5. So I'm going to go with the flow here and just play the knight to c4 since that was what the objective of a4 was, to stop b5. Okay, now here, playing him just about every solo. He's one of my students, so he gets to play every time. It's a bonus of taking lessons from me. I'm not playing the King's Indian attack against him. I'm kind of mixing it up because I want him to get a feel for different openings, okay? So I'm going into English 4 knights, and I pretty much know all the theory, g3, e3, d3. But a3 is kind of an interesting move. In effect, what happens is white plays a Sicilian defense with a tempo in hand. And the Sicilian's not a bad opening, so I'll go ahead and take. Okay. Now, let's see. This game, there's another one of my students. He gets to play all he wants. Okay. So basically, now he's spent the tempo to play h6. That's what I wait for. I wait for that one tempo to come. Now here I pretty much need to play c3 first because e4 might cause some embarrassment, and I'll drop the pawn on b2. And now he's developed to his bishop. Maybe he's getting ready to castle queenside. Well, then I get a pawn storm too. I get b4 and so forth. But I'm just going to go through with the system here. And let's see. What if he tries e4 now? e4, pawn takes. And then I can just drop back to e1 if it has to. Wait, let's see. Let me think about this for a second. You can't always just blindly follow the system. There is a subtle difference here. A lot of times the e4 push by black is premature. The reason I say it's premature is that white can take on e4 and liquidate the queens and often destroy black's right to castle or make him stop and defend pawns. And if he takes back with the knight from c6 to d8. So let's see, knight bd2. If he plays e4, I take, he takes. Well, I have time to play knight h4. Let's see, knight bd2, e4, pawn takes, knight h4, attacking the bishop. Yeah, I'll be fine. Knight bd2. It's always good to double check things. Okay. Now the question is, how do I deploy this? Generally speaking, white doesn't mind if black takes on c3. It'll isolate my pawn on a3, but I'm going to play this kind of like Scheveningen style. Just get a very solid game and see what he can do. Okay, he did castle queenside. Now, as I was saying, that's just a little oops. I get bishop g5 here. Now I got to make sure he doesn't have a trick. Like if his bishop was on g4 and my e-pawn wasn't there, he could play bishop takes f3, and that'd be kind of embarrassing. But here, I just going to pick up the exchange. Okay, so now I go through with the system. Uh, I'm not sure if I've gone through every move on all these. Let's just kind of back up. Uh, so, I'm playing my 9th move here. My 10th move will likely be e4, and if he plays h6, I'll throw a what was that? I can't remember what I was going to say, which game I was looking at. Oh yeah, I'll throw bishop takes f6 in. Okay, so now I might have been commenting about this. He's castling queenside, so his intentions are to attack my king. Well, then I get to attack his king. And sometimes noticed in these opposite side casting things that the black attack actually starts ahead of white's. But here, I get my pawns rolling right now. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see what happens. Okay, g3. Okay, lost some time here. Kind of these late starting games. Somehow they don't take me to these late starting games right away. That happened once before. I think I have 6 games going. So it's kind of disappointing that people are signing up faster than they're showing up. And I sent out 3 challenges today that weren't accepted. Actually, maybe 4. One guy left. Or he's back. Well, I'll try him. Oh, he's playing a game. Yeah, well, you play a game, you can't play me. Electric Pawn, sorry. I was here. I don't know who else is on the list. Hopskid, I know, is on the list, but he's playing a game. I have my friends list here. You can't see it on the screen, but I have my friends list open, and it shows everybody that's in live chess, and that's where you have to be. You have to be on my friends list so that we can, so I can find you easily enough. If you're not on my friends list, I don't know if you're here. I mean, it's next to him. Oh my goodness, why are you giving me your queen? Ugh. Okay, well, sorry, I pretty much gonna have to take it. Let's see, bishop takes f6. You take my knight. I take your rook. You take my bishop. I'm gonna win a queen and a rook for 3 minor pieces. Can I do better than that? Bishop takes, pawn takes. I'm going to queen for 2 minor pieces. Might as well get the rook with it too, right? Okay, so bishop takes f6. Okay, now we continue. We threaten to trap the bishop. Okay, so bishop e7. Now I play bishop d2. The purpose of this is to be able to take back on c3 with my bishop. Okay, so here's the nitty-gritty of this system when you're opposite side castling. You want to induce some kind of weakness so that you can open up lines. I'm ready for b5. The question is, do I want to do it now or later? Normally I play e4 here. Let's see. I kind of omitted that move last time. e4. If I play e4, he takes, I take. He can take with his bishop on e4 because my pawn's pinned. I mean, my pawn's pinned, my knight's pinned. So, it's kind of interesting, just kind of illustrate with the pawn. I can't analyze the position here, which you're not supposed to be able to, but I'll just point with my e4. See, pawn takes. When I take back the pawn on e4 is guarded by the knight, and this file is opened up, so my knight can't take on e4. I don't want to play rook e1 to prepare it, but if I put my queen on b3, which is square, or even c2 like it normally goes to. See, I never put it on c2. Then I'm supporting the e4 push. A drawback with putting it on b3 is that later when I play a b5 move, I may run into knight a5. So I'm just going to play queen c2 here and move on to the next game. Okay, so he took my knight. Now I have 2 bishops loose. I can take the rook on d8, or I can take the pawn on g7. I'm going to lose this bishop in the long run. Both bishops in the long run here anyway. Let's see. Bishop takes g7, pawn takes g2, king takes g2, knight goes to e7, bishop takes h8, rook takes h8. Yeah, we'll just take the bishop on. But I get an extra pawn with it, but I'm not so worried about the pawns. Let's see. I'm going to give up 3 minor pieces, but get a rook and a queen. And that means I have a queen against 3 minor pieces, and I'm a rook up. So he's getting some wood for it. He would have been better to give up the exchange and just moved his queen. I don't know. I get an extra pawn for it. Might as well get 2 pawns out of it. I'll just take on g7. Okay. All right. Now, as I was saying, I need to go Scheveningen style here. I could also go dragon style. This is flexible, where I could play g3 and bishop g2. I've done that before. Just have to make up my mind and my taste and preferences here. There was a time back in the 70s when I was playing the Sicilian. Well, I was even playing it into the 80s. I took it up in the 70s. I was kind of stubborn. I didn't play it right away, but I learned how to play against it as an e4 player. I run into Sicilian quite often. The mainline knight or as black. Everybody's prepared for that with white. I relied on the Scheveningen system as black. And I really wasn't a big dragon fan. I never was. Part of it's because it's been analyzed to death, and if you really have to do a lot of work to know all the lines and keep up on that stuff, what do you do if your opponent knows it better? Well, you get a bad game. But the Scheveningen's the kind of system you can sit and play quietly, just like the dragon too, because this is a quiet variation of the dragon. He's not castling queenside and getting ready to launch the pawn assault. So, after my line, which line I want, I'm going to go ahead and try the Fianchetto line. Well, actually, you know what? I want to teach something about the Scheveningen. Let's just see how this turns up. I changed my mind. Okay, here's the tempo spent. So now I happily chop off the knight. Now here comes his pawn assault. So one way you meet a wing attack is to strike in the center. So now I play e4. Okay. Now my move here. Wow, it's really eating my time. Plus 4 minutes on that one. Okay, let's kind of scout a little. Look, somebody moved here. Okay, so now I have to take on g2. But for the moment, I have a queen for 2 minor pieces. And I can't allow him to take on f1 with check. I have queen for 2 minor pieces, and his rook on h8 is trapped. So he should develop his knight to ge7 so that he can recapture the the bishop on h8 when it takes there. So just have to wait and see how things go here. One person who had been on the list and took himself off sent me a chat and wanted to play. So gladly give him a game. Anyway, so he's taking his time. Okay, somebody moved. Okay, now let's see. Move 11 is e4. And we go with flow. Okay. I got him thinking in every game. Okay, I think I'm playing 6 games. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hope I don't have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have 5 games. Oh, that's a shame. Only 3 people off the list. Let's see. Okay. Arek KX was on the list, so he comes off. Okay, he's a student. He comes off the list. That's 2. He's a student. So it's kind of disappointing. Everyone wants to play me, but why don't you come to live chess when I run these things? I don't know what I want to do here. I can send out a news report and I'll get 50 more people to sign up. So, okay, he did play knight there, so I take. Now, one thing I noticed in the past time, well, the ones I started later didn't refresh or is often. Okay, so now uh, tempo on his bishop. If his bishop vacates the h7 b1 diagonal, I have a potential check with bishop h3. I'm not quite certain I want to do that. He might play bishop e6 to take c4 from my knight. But I'm getting ready for b4 here in a moment, or b5, to be launching my own attack, since that's the strategy he's dictating here. Okay, he took. Now, so like I say, I've got a queen for two bishops and a knight, and I have a rook ahead. And plus, for what it's worth, in the bank I have two pawns. So in order to use my two rooks, I need open lines, and I have no pawns. So no pawns exchanged. So time to start advancing them. If I play e4, that'll open up a file. Now I got to make sure I'm weakening f3. Just got to make sure those minor pieces can be troublesome if you're not careful. All of a sudden they can infiltrate a position. I don't see what he can do here. Okay, so he's playing on the knight. Very interesting. Okay, that ties my knight down a little bit. If I play h3, he goes back to e6. I don't think he'd go back to h5, but I don't want to play h3 because that weakens my pawn structure. I can't play knight c4 here because I hang my knight on f3. I did that in a game. Dropped a piece, just bang, just like that. It's funny. Well, it wasn't really that funny, but it happened. Okay, so let's see. Don't really have a square for that knight to move to. If I put it on e1, I drop material to bishop e2. One idea of playing h3, even though it weakens my king side a little bit, is it does drive his bishop back. But I can't really play knight h2 to follow up because bishop e2 again, and he's got pressure on f2. Now, next question is he threatening anything I should worry about, such as rook takes d2. Now, if I take with the knight, now bishop e2. But he's given up an exchange to do that. I'll just let him get the exchange back. So I'm ready for b5 at some point. When do I want to do it? I push, he takes, I take. Now I've weakened his pawn structures just a wee bit. Then I get ready for c4 with the idea of c5. Yeah. Okay. So I can't play c4 right away because b4 hangs. So here I go through with the method here, and here I can advance my c pawn after I get rid of that knight. See, the c pawn is one of the anchors of white's position. It keeps black's knights out of d4 and b4. But I'm going to get that knight out of c6 here and follow up with c4. Wow. Doesn't like to refresh this game for me. Okay, well, I've moved. He's taking his time, though, which is good. It's good if you take your time. You want to take your time in these things because that's what I've given you. 90 time control in 90 minutes plus a 30-second increment. So I can just sit here and look at this for a minute rather than flick around, although I don't think it's my move anywhere else. Let's see. Let's flick over here. Oh, just as I flick, he answers. Okay, so now I've got to play per the system here. One of the key squares black tries to utilize later is the c5 square. White tries to utilize the c5 square. We'll see how that comes into play in a little bit. The backward pawn on d3 is virtually unassailable. White's never been able to go and win that pawn, even when the other pawn was way advanced. I mean, the e-pawn was up one square. Okay, so now my next move will be c4, I think. Okay, so he's putting his queen there. All right, so I've made my 11 free book moves, and now it's time to think. What I've been playing a lot of times is just the safe solid rook e1 because I use f1 as a springboard for my other pieces. My knight will go to f1 and e3 in a lot of cases. So let's go ahead and do that. And I wait their moves. Okay, he didn't castle right away. Well, it's just c4 is a perfectly good move for white going into could go into symmetrical English or even Sicilian, closed Sicilian reversed, but I'm just staying with the system here. Okay, he castled. Now I go ahead with bishop g5. Okay. Follow the system at hand and see what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. Is that guy on my list? Well, you're kind of late. It's just I remember I have somebody with a bunch of digits. No, it's not him. There's a 2001 1002, and I have a 301459265. How do you remember a name like that? Oh, how can you give me a piece? My goodness, free piece. Which one do I want? Bishop or knight? Let's see. I'll give the open file I want. I don't have any bishops here, so part of me wants to take the bishop. Yeah, I think I will. I think that's better. Take the bishop and see what happens. Okay. All right, knight a7. Now I go through with c4, right? Now here my plan is to play c5. And what I'm trying to do is drive that bishop off of the diagonal that it's on, so it's not pressuring f2. c4, c5. Now I play c3 just to make sure that nothing bothers me down on b2. Okay, now I castle. Okay, so even game. Knight a6. Plan to play knight c7 and knight e6 maybe. Well, that's a few tempos to get over there. I'll just follow the system here with knight bd2. Hey, why are you giving me pieces? Okay, you can't survive if you give me pieces. You know. Okay, thanks for the piece. Okay, so let's see. He played there, like I said, might be doing that. But you know, this is interesting. I can play e4, just break the system slightly and preserve my bishop. Well, I can't really preserve it. Well, you know, I can. See, I can play e4, knight e6, bishop e3. You can play knight g4. Okay, queen c2, knight f6. Or knight e6. e4, knight c6. Knight e6. Just a little different than I normally have. Let me just kind of peek at some of these other games here. Okay, queen e6. Where's he going? Okay, do I win anything with c5? Does c5 win a piece? Where does his bishop go? c5. Bishop a5. I take it. Rook takes d2. I take on d2 with my knight. I think that wins a piece. Okay, well, I guess we'll find out. All right, now there comes the pressure on the d file. So now, do I want to play a move like b4? It takes a tempo to do it. I don't mind if black wants to play a5 and then a4. As I say, the key square here is c5. And I'm going to be working on it here in a moment. The first step will be use this open file and play rook c8. Or rook c1 rather. Okay, and we'll come back now. Let's see. What did he do? He took. Okay, so now I have the advantage of a queen for a knight plus a rook. A queen and a rook for the knight. Well, let's develop. Queen f3. Okay, bishop h4. Playing that voluntarily. He's trying to get back to g6. Okay, nothing is protecting d5 other than this pawn. Usually I don't take on d5. I'm not saying I'm going to here. Knight f1, bishop g6, knight e3. Then he takes on e4. I've been in that position before. Yeah, I'm just going to play knight f1. Just careful maneuvering. Okay, now I hadn't answered this one yet. So here his plan is to play knight e6. But you know, I can do things a little differently here too. I can play a move like knight c4, and if he plays knight e6, I can go ahead and drop my bishop back to d2. Not something I normally do. And if he plays b5, no, I can't put my knight on a5. Queen's on it. b4, I can play the knight back to a3 with a tempo on the pawn. I ran into some trouble in one game. I tried that. So I'm looking at e4, knight e6, bishop e3, knight g4. Now he's taking time to win the bishop pair. Queen e2, knight takes e3, queen takes e3. My queen usually doesn't go to that square, but I've got a whole lot of development for it. I'm going to try it because his rook and bishop on the queen side are not developed. Okay, now let's see. Like as I said, I needed open files for my rooks. Okay, he's not on this pawn because his knight will fall. So if I play rook af or ae1 and he takes, I'll take his knight. He takes my rook, and I take back. So I gotta get my rooks active. So I'm gonna go there. Okay, he did take there. Okay, on e4 and bishop g6. Now he's not pressuring e4 at all, so this is a position where I can play knight e3. And I've maneuvered like this before. Now the f knight will often go to d2 and c4. And whether or not I play a4 to keep it there or not, or go through some other different maneuver. But knight e3 here is the move. Okay, so he's getting what he can for it. He's getting 2 pawns. Oh, did win a piece. For 2 pawns. Okay. Let's peek at this one. See, I'm willing to part with the bishop if a tempo is spent with the pawn, but here I'm thinking about if knight e6, I'll put it back on e3. And if he really wants the bishop, I'll make him work for it. Okay, now he guarded that. Okay, but that weakened d6. I can check and pick up a pawn and be on your rook. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, queen. All right, so now what have I done? I've accomplished the win of a piece for 2 pawns, and I can win 1 pawn right here with knight takes e5. Right? And I've gotten the pressure off f2. If he plays queen d6, I I can always put the knight back on f3 or c4, or I could even contemplate taking on f7. Queen takes d2, queen takes, okay, my queen takes d2, rook takes d2, then I take the pawn on f7. He's got two pieces for the rook, but I've got, no, actually he doesn't have two pieces of the rook. He will have one two-piece rook, but he's already down a piece. He'll have, let's see, I'll give him his piece back. Yeah. Sometimes you go through all these possible exchanges. You have to stop and remember what you're counting. Okay, if I take care of a piece for a pawn, queen d6. Now I can play knight takes f7, right? Okay, I'm going to get a rook in the end. Queen takes d2, queen takes d2, rook takes d2. My knight takes on h8. See, I forgot about that. Now, question: can he trap the knight on h8? Because if he doesn't, I'm going to have a nice material advantage. How can he stop that? The knight's flight square exit point is f7 and g6, both threaten e5, which is well covered. Let's see. You can play bishop h5 and hold the knight back. Let's see. Yeah, it's interesting. Knight e5. But, I don't have to, on queen d6, I don't have to take on f7. I could put the knight on c4, or even, or bring this knight up to c4. Both of those tempo the queen. I believe I can get away with taking this. The worst thing happen is somewhere I lose a piece. Now it gives them a knight d4 move, because I've uncovered d4, knight d4, and he can get a check on e2. So, actually, no, he can't play knight d4. He gets mated, rook a8. Okay, so, okay, we'll go take it. All right, now he played knight b6. Okay, so now here's the point where I put my knight on e4. And then I'm eyeballing c5. Okay. So what was I saying? Just take this pawn. Okay, rook a d8. Now I can't play e5 because I give up my queen. But this is the part where I redeploy a knight. Now let's see, knight d2. Now if he plays b5, I can play a4. He plays a6. We swap pawns. My queen can go to... I can't put the queen on b3. But I can always... Let's see. I should be getting quite used to these. I've had them so many times. So like I say, this might be a position where I want to stop and play a4 first. But then he can go a6, knight d2, b5 if I had that happen anyway. Pawn takes, pawn takes. Now the file's opened up. I've also... I could play bishop f1 to stop b5, but then a6 comes in once again. So you can't really stop a6 and b5. Sometimes I've maneuvered that knight on f3 to h2 and g4. Do I really want to get it to c4? What's it? See, the only thing I have to concern myself with is if he tries to take over d3 at the wrong time. For me, as long as I keep the knight on e3, he can't push c4 indiscriminately. the idea of h4 is to play knight h2 and knight g4. So h4, he may play h5, but that also gives me a target on h5. I can do some maneuvering. I've done this before with bishop f3 and queen e2. Okay, I'm going to try this. I've used this method before. I think it's better than the knight c4 idea. Okay, so let's see. What if I just check here? Okay. Uh-oh. There's checkmate. Sorry. Okay, I mentioned that. There it was, checkmate. Okay, he played this. Okay, so now I don't necessarily want to get double pawns, although the f-file would be great. I'll just follow through with my idea of queen e2 so that the bishop can come back to e3 when it's attacked. Okay, now let's see. There's another check here. I'll take it. And I didn't expect a quick win. This guy, let's kind of go over this and see if I can get through it. It's kind of a surprise. I didn't even see the mate right away, too. You know, I'm slow on these things, but let's see. Let's back it up. Somebody sent me a chat request. What's that? Let's see. He's making some comments. Okay, let's see. So he tried the opposite side castling approach, and for some reason my attack got a little quicker than his did. Oh, somebody moved. You will see on the video. Okay, so let's see. I've got a check. I don't have a check. His knight is pretty useful here. Is that knight useful? I'm gonna try and trade it off. Guard my pawn on c2 and liquidate. All right. I was going over the game with solo 1c. Okay, so here he tried to castle queenside and start an attack, but because this bishop is a useful bishop was pressuring f2, I had to step carefully. But I noticed I wasn't following through with my system. I wasn't playing the queen out right away. I don't know, just forgot about it. And I'm not. It's probably better to keep the pressure on e4 and bring the bishop back to h7. I really don't think this check does me much good. Especially when you're going to be advancing your pawn. So put the bishop on g6 most likely. Although it's definitely competitive. But this gets my attack started. And here, I think what you have to play is something like bishop c5. But it doesn't allow knight b3 because you're still on f3. Although I could do that, I suppose. Knight b3 you take. I take on c5. It's balanced chances. Both my attack's just a little bit farther advanced than yours, and this gives me a piece. And as I say, knight takes e5. I was looking at queen d6 for a while, attacking the knight on d2, and thinking that either knight can go to c4, or I can take on f7, and maybe my knight gets trapped on h8 in the end of it with bishop h5. But then here, let me finish it off. Where is it? I saw that if knight d4, that I'm thinking about the check on e2. Where am I going to put the queen? And there's a rook mate, and there it was. So that ended the game, and I want to thank you for playing. Let me close the X and get to another game here. I don't know where my moves are. Okay, let's see. Knight e2. No, queen e2 is my last move. Okay. So I'm playing this one a little bit differently than normal, but then so are they. Okay, h4, he's still thinking. Got them all thinking. Knight e4. He's still thinking. Carlos takes his time, which is good. You need your time to think. Okay, my move here. He declined the trade. Okay, well, I got to check now with the queen, and I think I win a piece. Queen's going to take the knight on b4. Okay, so unfortunately only 5 games and 3 people come off the list, and one wasn't even really on the list because he had taken off. He said he'll let me know when he wants back on, and he let me know with the chat, hey, you're playing, I'm ready. Okay, fine, you got your game. And I wish there were more games. I wish I could play 20 of you and just run around crazy trying to trying to analyze as quickly as I can. 20 is a little bit too much for me. I've done, since I started doing this time, I think the most I had was 11, and that was quite a workout. Okay, so he's moving his king, and now I'll pick up a knight, and now I'm up a queen and a rook. Okay, now comes h6. Okay, so fine. Now, if he takes the knight, I mean the bishop on e3, he's spending a lot of tempos to do it, and he's playing the h6 move too. He may not want to put his knight on e6, but where else is it going to go? So, looking at the time, he's taking his time. I have plenty of time in every game. I'm not really running out of time anywhere. But so much for doing it on Monday night. I mean, there was a request to do it at this time, and then unfortunately the one that wanted it couldn't play this particular time. I mean, I'll do another one, but I got to find times that'll work. I'm trying to get everybody involved here. Okay, let's offer you another trade and threaten e7. See, I'm threatening queen e7 mate. That's my threat. Epaulette mate or swallowtail mate. It's kind of like a swallowtail. He could play knight d5 here. Then I get knight e5 check in. Knight d5 defends. Uh-oh. Well, he blocked the mate that way. Okay, so queen check. Why not? Queen b5 check. Okay, well, that's interesting. He's attacking attacking e4 and indirectly pressuring d3. So knight c4, knight c5. If he takes, I take with the rook. He could take my pawn. Now, I've had an interesting game where I accepted the double pawns and a pawn minority. I can play a move like queen c2 here, and if he takes my knight on e4, let's see. I get those double pawns look horrible. A lot of people wouldn't even consider it, but it's one of those positions where that those pawns are controlling a lot of territory. The e3 pawn is controlling d4 and f4. The e4 pawn is controlling d5 and f5. And plus, it opened up a diagonal for the light squared bishop that it didn't have. And so I don't mind so much black taking on e4. The only question is, how do I want to proceed to allow this? I have to be certain my bishop on d2 doesn't get dropped accidentally to some simple tactic where the d file opens up and it gets clobbered, but my knight on f3 is protecting it. So the candidate moves here, moves like bishop c3, queen c2, queen b3, maybe even, no, I can't play queen a4, the knight's on b6. So I'm taking a quick walk here with this position in my head, and with my wireless headphones, I can afford that luxury. Had a game I played it online over at ICC and Team 45 League where I used a system something like this, And almost every piece of mine that did touch c5. I think one knight didn't make it there. And of course, the light squared bishop can't make it to c5, but every other piece, queen, both rooks, and knight, and my dark square bishop all occupied the c5 square. And I finally reached a favorable rook and pawn ending and won it. Um, so it's it's a solid system for black at the Sicilian defense. That's why it's the most popular defense to e4. But theoretically, any defense to e4 is good as long as you're prepared. And another interesting question is if the Sicilian is so great for black, why isn't the English with the tempo in hand, in this case the pawn on a3, why isn't it so much better for white? Well, one of the answers is because white often tips his hand. He's that half tempo ahead. That's kind of hard to understand. It's kind of an advanced concept. But then again, a lot of the moves don't really matter much. See, a3 is the tempo I've gained, and or the tempo ahead I have. All that does is it stops black from occupying b4 with a knight or even a bishop. That's all it really does. Although it's something that black will often play in the Scheveningen system. Where's my other extra tempo that I castled earlier? That my other extra tempo, you could argue, would be the fact that I played knight e4. Now the whole argument could resolve in this case. Is his plan to take on e4 a refutation of this idea? Well, like I said, I've explained these ideas already. The double pawns that white collects on the e-file control a lot of squares. White accepts a pawn minority, but white gets a lot of play on the queen side, and I pick up the two bishops, and they're both excellent pieces in this type of position. And the control over the c5 squares is put on hold for now, but the open c-file can become a factor. So now the question is, how valuable is me having the double pawns? Like I said, I've got experience playing this before. I've done this, and it worked out nicely for me. Let's see. But theoretically, a grandmaster could think an experienced grandmaster will know how to handle these positions, and theoretically maybe black can accept that giving up the bishop pair and taking the pawn majority and trying to run with it, and that if white can't make any progress, eventually that double pawn will be useless. So I do need to develop my queen. Bishop c3 does tempo the pawn on e5. So let's consider that for a moment. I was talking about that as a candidate move. The first question is, can he bother that bishop? Well, yes, he can. He can play knight d5. Okay, well, but he can't right at the moment. Okay, because I will just take the pawn on e5, probably even with the bishop, and although that opens up the e-file and potentially my double, but he doesn't want to sack a pawn here. You don't want to give up a pawn unless you have a bigger lead of development. But bishop c3, what if he plays? Well, let's see. What if he plays on bishop c3? Bishop takes e4. Let's discuss this line because this is interesting. Bishop c3, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, queen takes d1, rook takes d1. Now he doesn't want to take on d1 and develop my rook. At some point, the purpose of getting rid of the knight on f6 is to make his bishop kind of crummy and put it on. He could close off the d file, bishop d6, and his bishop's kind of crummy. Or he could put it on f6 and it's kind of crummy. In either case, but then I've got my bishop's a little bit in the way. it's in the way of using the C file to its extreme measure. Uh, Queen C2. The queen is more or less unassailable from there. Uh, Again, I have to watch out for any tricks on the D file. But as long as my knight's on F3, he can't open it up and steal my bishop. Queen C2 also gives me the option to play the maneuver Rook FD1 and Bishop E1. This is a common theme used in a Sicilian defense. And then I'm ready for Knight C5. And eventually it'll come down to where he has to take it. But I think this is a very interesting type position. So we'll see if he gets into if he ever takes on E4. So I'm going to allow it and go through. My plan right now is Queen C2, Rook FD1. I just played it. Okay, let's see. Rook D8. Okay, now I play Knight H2. That was my plan. Now I have to watch out for doubling of the rooks because he'll threaten to come down to the 7th rank. So Knight H2, if Rook D8, Rook FD8, Rook D1, covered. Rook takes, Queen takes, and I've got E4 covered. So here the idea is to try to provoke him into playing H5, with giving him a pawn weakness that I can attack with a future Bishop F3 and Queen E2. Okay, so there we have it. Knight H2 is the move. Okay, now he blocked with his rook, and that allows a knight fork. Okay, so check. Now he played Rook B8. He didn't take the queen. Okay, I mean not the queen, not the bishop. Duh. Okay, so he's taking his rook off the long diagonal. He's preparing B5, which he could have done anyway. So what if I play A4 here? It weakens B3. Let's see, A4. He can't play B5. Well, he could. But pawn takes. Rook takes. I take here. He takes. I take on A7. He takes on B2. That's no good. Knight C4. If B5, I have Knight A5, and that threatens a fork on C6. And the knight can come back to B3. He's safe. So Knight C4, B5, Knight A5, Bishop D7. Did I really gain anything there? Well, I will have blocked the B file. Eventually they'll play B4 and want to take on C3, and I've got to cover C3. Of course, let's see. A4, B5, pawn takes, rook takes. Well, I don't have to. That takes the sting out of his pawn roller, and I can just guard that rook, and he'll have a target. Okay, A4. So see how I solve these things? This way I can play Knight C4, and he can't play B5. Okay, I think I won a game. I think I heard a click. Yeah, this game unfortunately went downhill really quick for him. He just gave me his queen. Let's see, he's making his comments. Can't believe the bishop move got my queen trapped. Was it trapped? I thought I could maybe I just assumed it could move. If queen moves and I take your, let's just look at the position. Wait, bishop G5. Your queen isn't trapped. You have G6, you have E6. Yeah. Let's just run through the game. He's making... Thanks for playing comments. I got to type something to him. Okay. Well, I'll make some comments here as run through the game. Okay, knight F3, D5, G3, knight C6, bishop G2. So, I run into the approach where they try to but I think D4 is a little premature. It just gives me the long diagonal for my bishop, and it gives me C4 square. And There, got c4. You castled. That doesn't lose your queen as you suggest. But you move it, and I'm just going to win material. We got something for it, but I think you end up giving me more. And now I think your next two moves, you just hung pieces. Okay, I'm attacking a bishop. You've got to retreat it. And, there's a piece, and there's a piece. I guess maybe you just didn't care. Anyway, I'm sorry, but, uh, let's just look. The rest of this is meaningless. Although you did prevent a maiden one on e7 threat that I had. I'll bring that up. Let's see. Let me back up. King d7. I think it's right here. Or is it before that? Don't remember. I think it's a little after that. Yeah, it's after that. So here, knight c4 threatens queen e7 mate, epaulette mate, or swallowtail mate. It looks like a swallow with the rook on c8, and pawn on c6, king on d7, and queen on e7. But looking back here, let's see, queen is on. Before you castle, one thing to do is just play h6 here. The purpose of that is to stop bishop g5. Whoops, how did I get to g5? Silly. Chess.com. Okay, let's try and put it back on a6. This stops bishop g5, and you're going to try your pawn assault. Take squares away from my bishop. What will I do here? Might play bishop d2 just to get it developed. I might consider e4 even. But no, that shuts off the diagonal you gave me. I don't think you're going to take en passant. Probably going to do this because I need to get a pawn storm going on my own when you do castle. And like for instance, if you castle, I might take and then play c3. And I can go back. Oh wait, no, there's a problem. I don't have to play c3. e5's hanging. Well, anyway, let's see. When I play, you might have to take, and that develops my queen. Hey, we have a game of chess to play. That's what we have. I'm going to be playing for b4 and b5 here. Oh well, thanks again for the game. Oh, he left the chat. Oh well, I was just going to tell him I was making comments about the video. I think I'm down to 3 games. Let's see. Queen c2, he's thinking. Okay, he just moved. Now here he's on my critter. So rook ad1. I was just looking at bishop h5 in response. Don't really want to play g4 and drive it back. I'll probably trade a rook. Although he can take with the queen and get on the open file. I might go back to that f3 idea I've used. No, f3 is no good. It hangs g3. I can always even play bishop f3 directly and let the chips fall where they may. But this is the indicated move here. Okay, now b6. Okay, I kind of like seeing that. He's not getting counterplay going. So the question is, where does my play come from? How about if I play knight h4 with the idea of f4 and f5, which will cut off his knight? It can take on e3 at some point, but I've accepted that. Let's do that. And I got 3 games going. The simul started at 7 o'clock Pacific time. It's now 8:17. The video is almost 1 hour. 2 wins. 3 games going. I don't think I've ever won every game in a simul. I don't know if I can do it here, but I'm going to try. Okay, I had a Coke here somewhere. There it is. Got to take a sip of my drink. Okay, so if he plays g5, I get knight f5 in. It's a good square for the knight. If he takes it with his bishop, activates my bishop. d3 of mine is weak. He could play moves like, I can't play bishop a6. It hangs his knight on g4. But not too worried about all that right now. He could try d5 here with the idea of d4 at some point. Which is one of the reasons I want to play f4, is just give me a little more room to maneuver here. Notice I didn't go through with my knight c4 idea. And one of the reasons I didn't, I think, was because I was looking at the position. Most of my pieces are on the king side, so this is one of those positions where I think I need to play for the king side attack. And we'll see how it goes. Oh, excuse me. I had plenty of rest, so I shouldn't be yawning. Black hasn't found a home for his light squared bishop yet. You can play knight e5 with the idea of bishop a6. But knight e5 runs into f4. So time spent. We're both winning 13 moves. We've had 20-some minutes come off our clock. We're not counting the increment. We're both averaging about 2 minutes a move. We're doing fine here. Well, I have a lot of time here. It's because he's taking his time, which is good. And Carlos is taking his time, which is good. So I got plenty of time in the bank. Plenty of time. So I did a test run on the audio on this just to make sure, because you can't see my software I use to record these. Basically, it's replay video capture, and there's like a little sound bar graph, and when I talk, it kind of goes up and down. It's not moving. So I did a test on it. It recorded it, so I'm assuming it's working. I had one day when I recorded a simul and nothing came out of it. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But I got everybody thinking. And there's another simul in the morning. Hopefully I get a lot of games done in there. Okay, just looking here. We're move 18. They say that the average game chess lasts 40 moves, so he's basically got 47 minutes to play 22 moves, and or 23 moves actually, which is just over 2 minutes a move, but he also gets a 30-second increment, so he's got plenty of time here. He's not in any kind of time pressure. Neither am I. I also have a luxury too, since I'm down to 3 games, and I never have 2 games over this quick. I'm down to 3 games. I can actually spend more time on each game trying to not necessarily play better moves, but explain why I use my thought process and find and demonstrate the better move. Because a lot of times, I realize after I made a move, I go back to the game. What I should have done is played this, and it would have been a better move. But because I didn't play that, the variation is that could have happened or forever lost. So the strategies of any kind of advantage I could have picked up, I can't explain. So objectively, somebody moved. When I get up to take a walk, I'll just take a second to peek at it, see what actually got played. Okay, he did play knight e5. So f4, knight takes d3 is fine with me. I'll pick up 2 pieces for the rook. He's welcome to put the knight back on c6 if he wants, or d7, and I'm going to get f5 in, I think. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that if I play the best move, then I can show my strategies of how if I get any kind of advantage or any kind of play, I can explain. There's somebody else moved. Oh, good, they're all moving. So when I finish my walk, I'll have 3 games to catch up on. So I heard a click and I heard a capture, and then I know the other guy moved. Anyway, let's try to continue with what I'm saying. The point I'm trying to make is that if I can play the best chess, then I can explain how I find an advantage and convert an advantage. How if my opponent did something that maybe wasn't best, and if I can demonstrate why, then I show how you can create a plan and a strategy in action, and follow through with it. Now, somebody made a capture. Was the knight taken on e4 in one game, or was the rook taken on d1? I think it's a mistake to take rook takes d1 in that one game because against Ronan returns, because I think bishop h5 might be his best move. But we will see when we come back. But when you don't play the best move in your game, then your chances for an advantage can vanish. And if your opponent's particularly stronger than you, essentially what's going to happen, you're going to start making little imprecise errors, and your game will deteriorate. I have friends that are FIDE masters, and just a game of mistakes. You make a little bit here, you gain an inch, you gain another inch, and pretty soon, whoops, a blunder happens, and a clear advantage is achieved. So I'm going to do my best to take my time in these games to try to find the best moves so that I can weigh among the candidate moves and come up with the best one, so that if I can actually win all 5 of these games, that'll be a first for me in these simuls, and then hopefully there's 5 examples of how to win a game, how to try to create play against what your opponent's doing. So the 2 games that I won already, there were just some mistakes made. Missed a mate, lost a piece, and missed a mate, and the other guy lost his queen for stuff. So I don't know what the other guys have moved yet. Shall I take a look first? Okay. Let's just go through with this. I was looking at f4. Now, I think knight takes d3 is bad because queen takes d3, bishop a6. My queen, I don't even have to put the queen back on c2. I can play c4, and he's pitched it. So now, f4, knight c6. If I push f5, I give him e5 back. He gets g5 in, and my knight's loose and has to go back to f3. I might want to wait on f5 just to take squares from his pieces. Of course, you can also go back to g4. Don't mind that so much. But, I've had experience in some like the English opening, this isn't, with the Botvinnik formation, pawns on c4, d3, e4, where I launch a pawn storm attack against the black king. And this has some similarities to it, so I'm just going to go through with f4, and we'll see what other moves were played. Of course, another option, before I play it, Uh, I can play king h1 here. No, well, there's a drawback to that. I'll explain it in a moment. But the idea behind king h1 is that f4, if the knight goes back to g4, I can drop the bishop back to g1 where it's safe and I keep it on the board. I've done maneuvers like this before, but the problem with king h1 is that now black does play bishop a6, and there's pressure on the d3 square that I could find unpleasant. So it's critical to kick this knight now and not let him get a c4 move in, which, let's see, if it was black to play here, aside from bishop a6, would black want to play c4? Well, not really. My knight's on it. Okay, but I just got to check these things. Okay, so f4. Now he did take that. Okay, so now I take, and I've got the position I was talking about earlier. Okay, so he played b6. Okay, I think he should have played bishop h5. Now, do I want to play a knight to g4 here? That was the intent of putting the knight on h2. It gets him to put his bishop back on e7. I didn't get the weakness provoked with h5, but somebody else did against me, and I had a nice maneuvering game against the pawn on h5. Notice also that rooks could be swapped in the and go into an ending really quick, minor piece ending. I've had a number of 3 and 4 minor piece endings. Some of these where I had to win in the ending. Now another option I have is to play a move like f4 here. Well, the problem with f4 though is that I'm not threatening e5. Because there's this pin. There's this nuisance pin with that bishop on g6 on the e pawn. So black's equalized. Okay, and black's going to equalize against this opening. I accept that. I'm trying to find an opening to teach you. I'm not playing it for me. I'm playing it to teach this thing. And by playing it, you can learn the system. It's safe. It's solid. If you're, no matter what your rating is, if you're 1400, you can play this against 1700s, and they won't get anywhere against you. You won't get anywhere against them, but hey, you might. If you're 1900, you can play it against 2100 and hold them to a draw. Okay, so knight h4, knight g4, bishop e7. What do I do next? Well, one thing to consider doing is eliminating the pin on my e pawn. How do we do that? Knight g4, bishop e7. Rook takes, rook takes. Then I play rook d1. And we go for a mass trade of heavy material. We go into the minor piece ending. And his dark square bishop's kind of crummy. He's got a bunch of pawns over there on the queen side on the color of his bishop. So it's one reason I'm happy to see that b6 move. And I don't mind giving up the bishop for the knight because the knights are so maneuverable. My knight at h2 is doing absolutely nothing. So just on general principle, I'm going to play it. And he might be able to get a bishop h5 in, which means I do want to make exchanges with my rooks just to get rid of that pin. But it's not a pin he can exploit because of my knight on e3. So like, just imagine the bishop, his bishop back on e7 and his bishop on h5. If he goes to play f5, I can take ef, and then my knight takes. As long as my knight doesn't get overworked covering the d1 square, everything should be fine. So knight g4, and I got everybody thinking. Okay, so I moved kind of quickly here because my move was forced. I didn't get it. Oh, he played that. Okay, not a move I anticipated, but not a move I'm really worried about. The natural thing is to put a knight in between. Let's see. Although the natural doesn't mean I have to play it. I could play queen f2 here. The idea being then to play h3. He'll have to move his knight away. Then I can play h3 and then g4. Something I've done in a lot of these systems before. And since my queen is now helping the king side along, I think queen f2 is good here. He needs to move his knight. I kick the bishop. He goes back. I can play g4, awaiting and preparing the f5 push. Because the moment I push f5, he gets e5 back. So I'm just going to play queen. Oh, no, I can't play queen f2. d3 hangs. See, I can't see everything. Okay, so it was a nice idea. That was the idea behind it, but there's a tactical flaw. That's why I am bad at blitz chess. So in blitz chess, I would know queen f2 is the natural move for all the reasons I just explained, and then see my d pawn disappear and go, oops. Matter of fact, it's worse than that. I get my queen trapped. So there I was hovering the queen over that square, and didn't work. So I got to put something on f3. Now, which knight? Some people would say put the h knight there. And why would they say that? Well, let's see. Because I'm not going to be able to push f5, him take on f5 with his pawn, and my knight occupy the f5 square. And if I play knight d f3, g5 just might be a move that becomes a nuisance. So here I play knight f3, and he's got to deal with his knight. So let's do that and go on. Okay, a6. Now I don't mind a move like a6. a6 creates a certain amount of inflexibility with those queenside pawns of his. Trust me, I know this from experience. How do I explain it to you? Okay, where do these pawns move next? If he ever advances his b pawn, his c7 pawn becomes weak, and c6 becomes weak. And matter of fact, well, he's not ready to move it, but that's the inflexibility of it. It also weakened the b6 square of all things. So even if he's able to get c5 in, and there's no guarantee he will be, it creates, like I say, a certain amount of inflexibility with his pawns. So here, what I do is I just go through with this maneuver I was talking about earlier, rook fd1, overprotecting d2. Now, I'm not really planning a discovery, although I might, and I may still play bishop c3, but what I'm doing right here is well, let's just talk about it before I move it, because I want to discuss candidate moves. I could always go back to the bishop c3 idea, and then I was saying he can make a crummy bishop on f6 or d6, or he can play f6 and imprison his bishop a little bit. I don't really have anything with a queen check necessarily. I might have something with a b4 push. The thing I like about rook d1 is it preserves the option to put the bishop on e1. I'm not planning a discovery, although I guess in theory I am. But one reason I don't want to play bishop c3 is because it shuts the c file down. I can always get that bishop into play later. And another thing about his pawn structure, this is one where I can play a move like b4 at some point, and those pawns restrain, my 2 pawns restrain his 3 very easily. And the fact that I'm taking all those squares in the center away from his pieces gives white a great position here. So I'm going to go through with this developing move here and call him as I see him. Okay, rook back. Now, somebody made a capture. Probably knight takes f3 check. So, this is the type of game where he's not pinning with bishop h5 yet. His knight has no entry points. Here's where we start liquidating rooks. And try, okay, rook takes, rook d1. Yeah. Pow. Off come the rooks. Okay, he did play knight takes. Now, which way to take back? With the knight or the bishop? If I take with the knight, he can play queen d7. He's stopping h3. I'm under a pin. Bishop takes. Has the drawback that he might trade a second set of minor pieces, and where am I going? If you can avoid pins, it's always a good thing. That's just a general rule. See, knight takes f3, queen d7. My knight's pinned. I can't play h3. This bishop of his is pretty good. Let's see. Might bait him into playing bishop h3. I can play rook f2. And then maybe I can use this bishop another day. Now I'll take with the bishop here to avoid the pin. Okay, now the hatches are battened down, so now I play rook d1, and he may play queen d8, in which case I trade rooks and stick my knight back on d1, which runs into bishop h5. And then I play knight back to e3, and everything's fine. Okay, so rook d1. Okay. So here I've decided to trade rooks and go into a minor piece ending. Again, even, you know, try luck in the ending, outplay him in the ending. The knights are arguably a little bit better than the bishops, you know. The black dark square bishop is not a good piece. And the knights are looking for maneuverability. We'll see if I can get it. Ideally, I'd like to get the queens off, then maybe get f4 and e5 in, although my pawns are extended a little bit. At least that will spring my bishop to life. And, you know, like I say, one way to look at it is I have an extra knight. Yeah, he has an extra bishop, but I have an extra knight. And the position is not open where the bishops are. The bishops come to life. He's got pawns on that pawn chain. His on the queen side blocks his one bishop in, reduces its scope. So there you have it. What else is cooking here? Let's see. Let's look at the time. I have an hour, 59 minutes. He has 43, 44 minutes, counting down. He has 31. He does take his time. I'm not planning bishop a5 and bishop takes b6, by the way. Although, would that be something I want to do in this position? Let's just consider bishop a5. His queen's got to run. Where's it going to put it? e6. Bishop takes b6. cb6. Okay, well, he traded it. Now I can take back with the knight, unless the knight wants to go to c4. How about if I take with the rook, since I'm talking about opening up lines, and get let's see. Before I take, let's talk about this a little bit. I have 3 ways to take: queen, knight, and bishop. Which way, huh? Let's look at each one. Knight takes f3. Uh, where's my knight go next? H4? Oh, we've been there before. Now when I play F5, he gets G5 in and my knight comes back. Although that does weaken his pawn structure a little bit. Now one thing about the absence of his knight on the knight that did get traded, he's not going to have knight E5 when if I do break with F5. Now, taking with the queen puts the queen in front of the rook, so if the F-file opens up, I'm not going anywhere. But it also keeps the diagonal open in case I want to try a plan like H4, H5, invite him to play H5, weakening him a little bit, so I can then maybe play G4. Do I want my knight to go to C4 here? Yes, if he opens up the B file, and the knight on C4 could be a useful, maintain some pressure on D6 and E5 and batten down the hatches on B2. So each one has something to be said about it. But then again, he hasn't opened up the B file yet. And even though the knight's on C4 looks good, I'm not sure how he gets into play. I'm going to take with the knight. That way I can get knight H4 in. Okay, so here he played queen E6. Okay, so now he's hitting B3, but how does he continue to hit it? Can't play knight A5, so I just play bishop E1 here. That was the maneuver that I was talking about for so long. Bishop E1. Now, suppose he swaps rooks. I take. He puts a rook on D8. And I play B4. Now I have to make sure that I don't go and weaken A3. So let's just play bishop E1 here, because this was the move I talked about. Of course, there's another idea here that I even might have been sitting there last move. One of the problems with A6, I even mention it, is it weakens. His knight on C6 is overworked here. Not his knight on C6. The pawn on B7 is overworked. It's guarding A6 and C6. See, I didn't even see the tactic. I can take on A6, I believe, and win a pawn. Bishop takes A6. If pawn takes, my queen takes. E takes. I take with the rook. Now my bishop on D2 is pinned, but it's guarded by the knight on F3. So I didn't even see bishop takes A6 last move. Let's see. Yeah, bishop takes A6 just wins a pawn. I knew there's a problem with A6. Okay, do I want to take it? So, it's one of the reasons I want to take my time and think about these things. See, bishop E1's not a bad move, and he may not be able to guard against bishop takes A6 unless he plays A5. Yeah. That just gives me bishop B5 with a strong game. See, bishop takes A6. He's going to have to play something. He's basically messed up. He has to take it because my threat is bishop takes B7 undermining. So bishop takes A6, pawn takes, queen takes C6. He trades queens. I take on C6. He brings a rook up to D7 to guard the pawn. Now he's planning to double rooks and pin my bishop, but I just double rooks myself. And my pawn ahead is a double pawn, but he's got weak pawns on the queen side. So, what am I missing? Bishop takes A6. Can he do queen G4? We could have done it last move, and he's not attacking this square. Bishop takes A6. I'll be darned. It was their last move. Bishop takes a6. Knight b8, bishop takes b7. He can throw knight b4 at me, but I just play a takes b4. He takes on, he's just got weak pawns. He's got problems here. Bishop takes h6. Okay, I did get him to play h5. Okay, so now I've got a target, h4, or h5 rather. Well, I pretty much have no choice here, right? I have to bring the knight back to h2. Well, I could play rook takes d7. Is that worth anything? Oh, knight's got to go back to h2 anyway. Let's let him make a move. Maybe he'll put my queen on d1. Let him take on d1. Okay, so I got the pawn induced to go to h5. So I've got potential battery of bishop f3 and queen e2. As long as I keep e4 under house, what do I call it, lock and key, I'm okay. So knight h2. All right, queen d7. Okay, so I took with the knight, so the idea here is to play knight h5, right? Knight h4, right? Or do I want to play h4 first? Then I can't. He plays h5. No, we're gonna play the knight here, and as long as I don't move my queen rook, I don't lose my a pawn. Okay, so I play there. The video was an hour and a half. So I've got an advantage here, and these games are about even. They're up in the air. So what is taking place? All 8 pawns are on the board. We traded 2 sets of minor pieces. He could play f5. No, I can't play f5. I play knight takes g6. This is one of the drawbacks with his h-pawn being up there. It weakened his kingside pawn just a wee bit. If I get my queen to a2, I'd be threatening knight takes g6, but yeah. If the dog hadn't stopped to relieve himself, he would have caught the fox. It's just counterproductive to get the queen over there. But it's just interesting to think of these things when you play a game. The possibilities that weak pawns exist. The queen could also be on b3 or c4. B3 would have been available if I'd put the queen on c2, but I chose not to put the queen on c2 in this line for reasons I've already given that I've carefully forgotten. I think the idea was to take back the bishop on e3 when his knight took, but his knight never took it. I still have the bishop on e3. So this is one variation where I didn't part with the dark squared bishop. It stayed on the board. So am I pieced down because I don't have my extra knight? No, I have a bishop, and I'll use it. So here, the idea is to play f5 and invite him to push his g-pawn, and there'll be a potential target on g5. Plus, he'll fix a pawn of his on the color of the square of his bishop. If he plays e5, he shuts his bishop in, then I play f5, and he plays g5, he's trying to lock things up. Well, I'll still find a way to open that up. I've done similar things. Okay, he took. Now I take the knight. Okay. Bishop d6. Now he guards his pawn. Okay, so I'm a pawn ahead, but it's a double pawn. I no longer have my light squared bishop. I no longer have my bishop pair. What if I play bishop a5 here? The idea being to take his knight and then snatch a pawn. And if he plays rook b8, I snatch his a pawn. He snatches my b pawn. I'm 2 pawns up, one being an outside pass pawn. He's got a rook on the 7th rank. And I've got the hatches battened down. Because he doesn't really have anything to attack with. So, plus d6 may drop. Can't run his rook over there if he's taking back on c7 with a pawn. I mean, on b6 with a pawn. So bishop a5, you can't play rook. Well, he can't play rook b8. If I play bishop takes, he takes with his rook. I was saying earlier this is about the c5 square, but not so much anymore. I could play queen b7 here, taking the ghost of his b pawn. That attacks his. He can't push it. You can play queen c8. You can play rook a8. Both of those are retreating moves. Bishop a5, what was I saying he would do? Or did I? I was saying play rook b8. Well, that gets his rook off the open, off the open d file, but puts him on the open b file. It also stops me from playing queen b7. His queenside pawns are weak. I can, one of the strategies is you don't try and win him now, you just win him later. But I'm not seeing a clear-cut way to go into a minor piece ending. Another thing, too, about a minor piece ending is we both have pawns on dark squares. I have on a3 and b2. He's got one on e5. Although his bishop's just not going to be able to come over and attack my pawn on b2. But I can't advance him easily, not without my pieces a little better coordinated, because if the b pawn moves to 1 square, he zaps on a3. If it goes to 2 squares, I no longer control c4 for what that's worth. And a3 would be under attack. So my pawns are fine here and here. I don't need to move them. I'm kind of liking queen b7, simply because it deactivates things for him. Okay, queen b7, rook a8. Now how about bishop a5? Well, he could play rook fb8. He's on my queen. My queen gets to come back to c6. And not really sure where I'm getting there. If I'm getting anywhere there. How about if I'm black, where would I redeploy my knight to? c5? Knight d7, c5? Well, knight d7 runs into trouble because a6 hangs. So I play a4 here with the idea of a5. a4 and a5. I don't know, that just seems to weaken squares. Okay, let's look at my knight. What can my knight do? I could go to g5. Attack his queen. Then come back to h3. Then where's it go? Phooey. Okay, knight e1, with the idea of knight c2, the idea of knight b4. Of course, if I can get him to d3 safely, then I can get to c5. Since the d file is closed, the bishop e1 maneuver is not necessarily needed. Queen b7. It's possible it could lead him into playing queen c8, and I just liquidate. But I still have to do some maneuvering here. Let's get the maneuvering started now with more pieces on the board. Okay, knight e1. Here, my knight isn't doing anything but pressuring e5. So knight e1. Now, if left to my own devices, one drawback of going to d3 is he gives him a discovery. Bishop takes a3. But also lets me trade his queen off and double up his e-pawns. Yeah, I guess they'll both be just as strong as each other. He weakens c7. I'll have the bishop against the knight. Well, we'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, so he played bishop f6. Okay, so he's trying to now if I go back to f3, he repeats the position, so we have to be creative and clever here. And put the knight on g2. That way I support h4, so f5, if it was my move f5, if he plays g5, I can get h4 in. So knight g2, and we await developments. And I'm down to what? I played knight h2, he hasn't moved yet. He's got 30 minutes left. He's got 25 minutes left. They'll have plenty of time. He's got 51. So he spent 40 minutes plus another 45 minutes on 20 moves. Going a little too quick here, but okay, somebody moved. Who moved? He put the knight on e5. Okay, where's that knight going? d3, f3, g4. I'm tempted to play queen e2 here. The purpose being I break the pin, I keep him out of c4, I keep him out of g4, was already out of g4, I cover f3, and if he plays c4, I can play rook takes d7 and deflect him from c4. So queen c7, he can't play b5, or queen e2, he can't play b5 because I take it. Queen e2 prepares f4, and then maybe the e5 move I've been trying to get in. And then I can maybe safely work on the weakness on h4. So, is it too early to play f4? Can I just do it directly? That's the question. The $1 million question. Let's see. Rook takes, queen takes. Where's his knight going? f4, knight g4, knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes. Then he pins me. Queen on e2, if a variation comes up, queen e2, knight g4, knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes. If bishop h5, I even have moves like knight f6 check. I don't know, it looks kind of even. We're going to bishop opposite colors. Let's see, f4, knight g4, knight takes, pawn takes, knight takes. Bishop there pins me. I break the pin with rook takes. Queen takes. Then my knight goes back to e3. One driver with queen e2 is that if he takes on d1 and I choose to take with the queen, I've lost a tempo in the position, which is what's telling me bit f4 first may be more accurate. Invite his knight to go back to c6. Then I play queen e2. So f4, knight g4, knight h takes g4, hg4, knight takes g4. He pins with bishop h5. I play rook takes d7, queen takes d7, and then my knight on g4 can hop back to d3 or to e3. And he has no entry points. So f4 is the move here. What am I missing? F4, okay. All right, e6. Okay, so I don't have to make the f5 break yet. I can play h4 first. On h5, I can play f5. Of course, another thing to do is just slow play this and double the rooks. Although that does, on the f-file, that does weaken the pawn on a4, but can he stop and take it if I'm attacking his king? What if I play h4 here with the idea of h5? h4, he plays h5, and I play g4. Now I'm threatening to win a pawn, so he takes on g4, my queen takes. Now I've got an isolated h-pawn, but I'm still ready for the f5 break. I've acted, h4, h5, g4, pawn takes, queen takes. I'm still ready for f5. In order to crack him, I've got to weaken his position. So, right now this rook's watching this pawn. Although, if I've got an attack, I can let it go. h4 does put a pawn on a dark square, which is the color of my bishop, but I'm not too worried about that. Also, with f5, well, I could play g5, then I play h4. I don't know. Let's see, f5 first. I'm making my mind f5 or h4. f5 does unmask attack on h6. And then if he plays g5, I play h4. But one thing too is he can also open up the E file, and that might be a file he can use. See, f5 e takes. The F file is now open, or the E file is now open, and he could make a nuisance out of himself. Let's keep the E file closed as long as we can. I'm going to go ahead and play h4, and we'll see what happens. You can't always get everything you want. I'm putting a pawn on the color of his bishop, a color of my bishop, inviting him to put a pawn on a color of his bishop, but I'm looking for a g4 break here after h5, trying to develop my queen, get my queen into the game, and create some threats. So he's down to 18 minutes. Oh wow, he's really using his time. He spent 79 minutes on 20 moves. Under 20 moves. He's going 4 minutes a move. You're going to get in time pressure here. I have to be careful about that. Okay. So, what's happening here? Knight g4 is a mistake. He has to put it back on c6, which place I'm going to play. Now I'm going to play queen e2 and try to work on the weakness on h4. So glad glad I got these 5 games going. I wish more came off the list. I mean, it's great to want to play me, but you do have to commit to up to 4 hours of playing me. You know, I feel bad for the people that want to play again, but um, you know, it's a system I set up where I play you once and not bury myself having to play every week. You know, if I did it, there'd be some I'd play 10 times and some I would never play. And the way it's going now, there may be people I never play. Uh, you know, they're not answering my challenges. Some of them were the first time I saw them, and you know, I had one that I'd challenged at least 2 times, probably two, maybe 3. Okay, so he did go back. Now, the idea is to have the battery on h5. Okay, so queen e2, then I cover c4. I'm attacking h5, and now I want to play e5. That's my next step at some point. So that the bishop could go from g2 to f3 and take on h5 without losing the pawn on e4. It does give him an option to try e5 here, but I don't think that helps him, because I'll just play f5 myself. He has to retreat his bishop, and then I grab the pawn. My bishop kind of turns out kind of bad, but anyway, queen e2 is the move, and I don't care if he takes on d1 because I take back with the queen, and I have control of the file. So now he's got a weakness on h5 that maybe queen e2 has tipped him off about. I had play like this in another game, and I think the guy could have actually held it, but he ended up dropping it. So let him take. He's down to 25 minutes. Let him take some time here to try to figure out that I'm eyeballing that with my plan e5. Bishop f3 and steal the pawn. And like I say, I'm more than willing to go into a minor piece ending. I have an extra knight. He has an extra bishop. I have an extra knight. So it's like, is that similar to the expression we use, is the glass half empty or half full? I guess the optimist says the glass is half full, right? And the pessimist says it's half empty. Well, the optimist here, I says, I have an extra knight. And I can't do anything about the fact that he has an extra bishop because I've already traded my bishop off. But this is the type of position that the knights are good at. So it's one thing when I was developing this opening, I used to keep that bishop on c1 for the longest time, and it was a nuisance. Now I've found just trading it off is perfectly okay. But that's where we're at, and you can't always trade it off. As you see in some of the games here, is when my dark square bishop is still on the board. I was willing to trade it off, but he didn't take it. So anyway, that's where we're at. I think I got all their clocks thinking. I'm taking a small walk right now. I haven't heard a click unless I walk too far from the broadcast range of these headphones, but I don't think I did. I'll walk back and take a peek. So let's see. No, he hasn't moved yet. And my kingside pawns are a little weak here. Game with Ronin returns, but they're not where he can exploit them. And one idea he might try is a pawn sacrifice, something like c4, just to activate that bishop on e7. I didn't consider a possibility like that. I think I'm okay if he tries it. Uh, he doesn't gain any new squares for his knight. So, and then the h5 weakness still exists, so he can't really afford to sack one pawn and then potentially lose another one. Okay, somebody moved. I heard a click. I heard that uh, click come out. He played d5. Okay, so here I was talking about the e-file maybe opening up. Um, now the e-file won't necessarily open up, but it might. Do I want to play f5 right now? It unmasks the attack on h6. It stops g5. Uh, One thing I could do too is just shut that e-file off and play e5. That closes the e-file off, puts another pawn on the color of my bishop, reducing its mobility. And I can still prepare an f5 break at the right time. Decisions, decisions. And I heard another click. Well, I'm up stretching my feet. I can't sit down for long. But I'd like to, I'd like to play about 20 games, just get this list whittled down. I mean, my goodness, there's over 130 or 140 on there already. If guys can't come, I can't play you. So, what can I say? I was contemplating trying to play simuls of 2 games at like 15-10. Play 2 of you at once, or one-on-one 15-10, but because that gives me the time control I'm getting when I play you guys. If I have 6 games going, 90 minutes divided by 6 is 15 minutes, and 30-second increment divided by 6 games is 5 seconds. I'm playing a 15-5 game. I mean, I could play a 15-10, but then you don't get 90-30. See? You get a game with me, but you don't get 90-30. What do you want to do? Show up or play that? I mean, there's nearly 8,000 members in this group. I can't play all of you, but enough of you are active that, or joining this group to play me and get this game. Going to try to get more masters to do this. I'm working on them. Will they do it? I'm trying. A lot of them like to play blitz simuls. I can get them back if you want to play them. It's a title player for you to play. Okay, time to go back to the computer here and see what... I just heard another click. But I have a luxury of extra time in these games, so... If I play e5, I shut down the C file. I mean the E file. Is he trying to play d4? Well, do I mind that move? With or without me playing e5. f5, d takes e. I can Zwischenzug with d takes, or f takes g6. And if he takes on d3, I grab on f7 with check. That's got to be good for me. f5. And if he does take with the e-pawn, I take back with the e-pawn. Now, I got my daggle for the bishop. Yeah, I'm pretty sure f5 is the right move. I'd like to be a little more developed here, but I don't quite have what I want, so I'm just going to play f5. Now, he played f4. Interesting. Okay, he's looking for counterplay on f2. All right, I'll buy that. He's down to 10 minutes too. Wow. Okay. This eliminates my double pawn. Gives him control of d5. Of course, I can play f3 here and then take back with the pawn. But no, that's no good. He just gets a lot of play on the f file. I like the idea of taking his pawn and putting my knight back on f3 here. And then my bishop can come back to e1 if need be. So do I care if he pushes f4? Like is black trying to play f4 here? Pawn takes, pawn takes. Exposes e4 a little bit, gives him a new square e5. His bishop might get active. Well, actually, pawn takes, queen takes, knight f3, e5. That bishop gets very active. Knight d3 runs into discovery. Bishop takes a3. I take on a3. He takes on d3. Don't want to take on f5. My queen's guarding it. My queen can take back. I have the other maneuver, knight c2. I can go to b4. b4 attacks a5. Yeah, this works. This will prepare bishop e1, a move I was trying to make. Knight c2. Can I play queen b3 here? Now I play queen c3 or bishop c3. Yeah, let's just play knight c2. Okay, what happened here? He played f6. Okay, he's trying to stop e5. All right, well, that's clever. Let's see. It also weakens e6 for what it's worth. I can play queen c4 here. Play f5 here. Queen c4. Bishop f7. I can't play f5. Bishop f3. Play that. So you can't attack e4 conveniently. I have 44 minutes here. I play bishop h3, but that takes me off the battery. I play queen c4, bishop h3, bishop f7. Queen c4, and if e5, I play rook takes d7. My queen hangs. Let's see. Let me check that again. Queen c4, bishop f7, bishop 8. Oh no, he's just going to take on d1 and upset the apple cart. Of course, I can always get the battery set up and remaneuver a knight to d2. The h-knight would be the prime candidate for that. Because the knight on e3 is helping secure d1. The knight on h2 isn't really doing me much, and I don't want it on f3 because that stops my attack. He's not threatening to go into g4 again, so the knight's done his job there. So I think knight f1 is the move. And if the queens come off, my bishop is tying his bishop down to g5. How do I get another, or h5? How do I get another attacker on it? That's a good question. Well, you don't trade queens. That's how we do it. We don't trade queens. Okay, knight hf1. Okay. Now he played queen g3 or g6. Okay, so now I just play a careful bishop e1 here. Let's not rush. Is he trying to take my pawn? Let's see. Of course, I can take his pawn, and he takes with the queen. I play bishop e1. He plays e4. His pawn on c7 is overworked. If I can work out something in tandem with a capture on d6 or b6, one of them could get weak. I can just give him back the pawn. What, I'm a pawn ahead? I can give it back to him. It'll cut his play down. It'll keep his bishop out of the game. And then my knight's, where's my knight going to go to? If he goes to b4, bishop takes. I don't want to take with the bishop because, well, I could. I can always bring it back. I'm just going to give him the pawn back here because it'll remain a weakness, and his bishop doesn't get activated, and everything's fine. Okay, he took. Now that opened up the e file. That was something I was a little concerned about, but we're going to go ahead and allow it. I take back. Okay, he's got plenty of time. I'm down to 30 minutes. You know, I don't. Because one way to play against me in the simul, if you want to beat me, is move quick. I mean, when I played f4, but I'm not so much worried about that because, well, what's he trying to do? Play queen, play f3. Well, we just stopped that in its tracks by playing f3 myself. Right? I was looking at this earlier. I didn't mention it. You know, f4 with the idea of f3, and if g3, I could just have to batten down the hatches here with my king. My queen can't get back easily, but f3. Well, let's say f3 has a problem. f3, pawn takes, knight takes. He plays rook takes. F3. Oh, my knight got into play. Like I say, I don't mind giving him the pawn back because he's got weaknesses. Let's see. If I take his pawn, if he takes with the pawn, then I can play f3. If he takes with his rook, his bishop doesn't get activated. Pawn takes. I'm thinking pawn takes is the best move. So there's no reason to give back a pawn. F3, pawn takes E3, knight takes E3, rook takes F3. Now I get knight F5 in. What's his follow-up? I'm threatening. Well, I do have a threat. Knight takes D6. Rook takes D6. I play rook takes D6. He plays queen takes D6. I take his queen, and his rook on F3 falls. It's an interesting trap. Let's see. Pawn take. No, wait. F3. If he plays pawn takes, I play knight takes. Okay, rook takes. He doesn't really have a threat. I play knight D6. Now his bishop is pinned because if he moves it, I trade queens and his pin on the G file is broken. Let's see. F3, pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes, knight F5. He could play rook B3 to guard the knight on D6. Then when I play knight takes D6, he can take with the pawn. I don't like the idea of giving him a pawn. I'm just going to keep his bishop out of the game. I'm just going to take the pawn. I think that's the best choice. Okay. And he's down to 16 minutes. He's down to 37. I'm down to 31. There's the pin on the file as I was expecting. So I play queen G4. Now if he plays G5, I got new weaknesses to work on. H5. He's also off my A pawn for what it's worth. I'm threatening H7 or H6. Okay, so queen G4 here. And he took. Now I play F3. And I give him the pawn back and my knight can get to D4. So F3. Okay, F3. And keep you guys thinking. So, if you can make 10 moves in the next 10 minutes, he'll gain 5 minutes on the clock. That gives him about a minute to move, and eventually he's going to be down to the increment. If you're going to play down to the increment, you'd want to be at the increment around move 40. So that would mean he's got to make 18 moves in. Okay, he took. Now I take with the queen to keep the knight where it's at. Or do I take with the knight? Wait, let me think this over. See, I give up C. No, he's not going to get on C4. I just take with the queen. Okay, and I'll trade. And I'm not necessarily going to trade queens here. He doesn't have time for C4. He can play B5, queen E2, then he can play C4. But I'm not so much worried about that, so I take with the queen here. Okay. Now he's after H3. So, knight D4, rook F6, knight F5. He gets a discovery with his bishop. He doesn't have a... Knight D4 is the move here. I'm also threatening knight E6. Knight E6. Knight D4. I also play knight B4. Knight D4. And let's think about this a second. Okay, what's he trying to do? Rook f6, rook h3. Well, I'll just play h3 and stop it cold. Then he gets to run his pawns. And almost play rook. No, can't play rook d5. Knight d4, rook f6, queen c2, rook h6, h3, rook g6, king h1. And if he ever sacks the rook on h3, if my queen's back on the second rank, she can get over here, I'll block the checks, and he's down a rook. Okay, so I'll play this with the idea of either knight e6 or knight f5, and potentially maybe even knight e2, potentially, or knight b3 and back on that c5 square. He can't play bishop c5 and pin me, and also rook f6 no longer threatens a check, a bishop c5 check. So this should be adequate. Knight c d4. Okay, now he's wanting to trade queens, but we don't want him to trade queens because I want this battery on h5. So I play queen e2 here and keep the queens on. Okay. All right, now he's playing there. So check. Knight f4. Do I check or play knight f4 first, or do I play knight f4 second? Well, I can't play knight f4 because something hangs. Okay. My queen's now guarding the pawn a4, though I really wasn't worried about it. What if I play rook a e1? That threatens discoveries. It stops him from playing queen d7 because I play fg6 check. And it also protects that bishop. And for the moment, my queen's guarding a4, though I really don't care if I lose that pawn. Rook a e1, he could play h5. Yeah, let's just get this rook into play. Rook a e1, I think that's the move. I do have to watch my time in that game a little bit. Okay, bishop e5. Okay, if you want to take my knight, you're welcome to it. What if let's see, bishop f2. That protects it. He plays rook f6. Let's see, let's think about this. Bishop f2, rook f6. My queen needs to retreat. Queen c2. Rook h6, h3. Queen g5. Bishop gets in the way. Knight f5. Bishop takes b2. Play moves like rook c5, threatening all kinds of dastardly things of my own. See, I like knight f5 because it keeps him out of g6. Knight f5. So I'm a pawn up. I have the luxury of giving one back. Although, might hang both my queenside pawns. Where's this knight? I'm going to set him down on the wrong square. That way he'll bounce back where he belongs. I don't make a mouse slip. Knight f5, bishop takes b2. Okay, fine. You got my pawn. I'm also on your c pawn. You're on my rook. I'm going to play queen e6 check here. For what it's worth. Queen e6 check, king f8, or king h8, knight h5. Now I'm attacking your bishop. And when your bishop takes on b2, or yeah, my rook takes on c7, and I'm attacking. No, I'm not really attacking g7 because your bishop's on the board, and I've just hung my just hung my rook on d1. Well, he's attacking my knight. Of course, I can also play bishop c3 here. But then my queen almost gets trapped. Let's see. Bishop c3, rook f6. Where do I put my queen? Queen e6 check, king h8, bishop c3. Now he plays rook f6. Queen e7, bother your rook. And no, wait a minute. Something's wrong here. I'm trying to remember the line I looked at.
Queen e6, king bishop c3. Now rook f6, I play queen e7. You can play rook e8. Attack my queen. My queen can go back to h4. Offering a queen trade. Oh no, my bishop's no longer on e1. My bishop's over on c3. Okay. Queen e6 check, king h8. Bishop c3. Rook f6. I can even play h3 here. One drawback with bishop c3 is it lets his knight get into c4. I've got that square covered. I don't want to give it back so willingly. I mean, knight e6 is there, but he trades rooks. But you know what? That activates my rook. His bishop takes b2. Pins it. Rook f6. Don't have queen e8 or a check. Didn't think giving him e5 would be any problem. I didn't mention it, but he found something to do. He's attacking a knight that I gotta deal with. Putting the bishop on f2 cuts off my queen from the second rank defenses I was talking earlier about.
Let me just peek at these other games real quick. Come back. Okay, queen d8. Now, question is knight f4. Knight f4, if he plays g5, pawn takes, you could take it with the bishop. Pawn takes g6 check. He'll take with the pawn, then knight f4. Rook f6. If I have less time here, definitely need to think of something. Okay. Let's see. Pawn takes, check, pawn takes. Of course, unless he can get away with g5, he's not throwing anything. So let's see. If his move g5, pawn takes, he can take it with the bishop. Let's see. Pawn takes, g6, pawn takes, knight f4, rook g8. I mean, I can go to e6. It can take, and my queen can take, and I've got a reasonable amount of pressure. I'm attacking his bishop on f6, which dealt twice. Yeah, got to do it. Got to open up some lines. I've got my rooks developed now, so this could be okay. Okay, so pawn takes. Now I got to think about this one. Bishop f2, rook f6, queen c2, rook h6, h3, queen g5, threatening rook takes. I'm going to play king h2 here. Yeah, this seems to work. Got to guard that knight and not block things, although I think I can handle the second rank. Okay, so he played bishop f7, so he's planning g6. Okay, so that'll weaken his pawns a little bit. So we let him. Bishop f3. And then I try for knight c4 and e5. Okay, let's weaken his pawns. Let's attack that pawn on h5. His queen can't penetrate. So bishop f3, getting him to play g6, then knight c4. And we'll figure it out. Okay, so he played there. Now, knight f4, attacking g6. Right? Okay, knight f4. I watch my time. 20 minutes there. He's down to 7 minutes. 12. Okay, f6 or g6. Okay, so now my knight on e3 is doing all he can. So now we get him up to c4. That could walk into a pin later if he can get something to a6. So I don't see how he easily can. This also gets ready for me to play e5, which could mess up his bishops behind a bunch of pawns. Oh, knight c4. Okay. He took. I didn't expect that. Okay, which way to take back? Uh, if I take with the rook, it stops rook f6 because the rook takes d8. Uh, it stops rook d6. Yeah, rook takes is the right way. Rook takes. I'll let him figure it out. Okay, rook g8. Now I play knight e6, attacking his queen and trying to get my queen to infest his position and uncover something with. Though I hate to trade that off. Uh, can I play h5 here? The idea of trying to soften him up around the light squares. h5, g5, queen f5 check. Yeah. h5 before he plays it. Okay, h5. We'll see where this goes. Could take it, I suppose, but I play queen f5 check. And knight takes h5, and I'm covering g3. Amazing. Some of these things work out. Okay, 18 minutes. I got plenty of time. Okay. Rook takes d4. Have 32 minutes. Plenty of time there. Okay, queen c7. Now, is he threatening b5? That is the proverbial question. Uh, do I want to play e5 here and cover an attack on his knight? Okay, e5. I'm happy if pawn takes, knight takes. Knight takes. I'll take with the queen. Queen takes, pawn takes. He's got a really crummy bishop. Although my pawn on e5 might come under some pressure. A4 first induces a6. And let's see. Of course, if I push e5, I don't have to trade queens on that square. I can take back with the pawn. And he'll really have fun maneuvering that. I think e5, pawn takes, knight takes, pawn takes. And wait, e5, pawn takes, knight takes. I'm forgetting something here. Pawn push. If he plays pawn push f5, that's got to be bad. E5, pawn takes. I can take with the knight. Yeah, now knight takes. Now I take with the pawn. I can potentially, not potentially, I can very easily get my knight to e4, as long as I don't hang the pawn on e5. Let's see, I have 30 minutes. Just don't want to run low on time in one of these other games. Queen c8. Okay, I think this helps me. I think I win a pawn. Maybe more. Let's see. Do I want to check with the pawn first? Drives his king back to g8 because, or h8 because knight h5 check would come. Pawn takes, king h8. Queen takes, he takes. Now I play knight h5. I'm attacking the bishop on f6. It goes to g7. Now his rook is blocked on the g file. I can get down to the 7th rank. Okay. Yeah, take with the pawn first. Check. Pawn takes. King h8. I don't even have to play trade queens. I can go pester h6 a little bit, I think. So, check. Okay. So he played queen f7, stopping his... Well, what stops me from playing rook queen takes c7 here? Rook c8, queen takes check. Queen takes c7 wins another pawn, right? Queen takes c7. Queen takes, rook takes. Queen takes, rook takes, bishop takes, rook d8, bishop c3, rook checks, king f2, and he's run out of checks. So this just picks up a second pawn. Okay. Oh, I hadn't moved here yet. That's right. I went and looked at another game. Okay, so king h8. Now, do I want to play queen h5, or do I want to trade his queen and play knight h5? Queen takes, knight h5. Queen takes, he takes with the rook on c8. Knight h5 attacks his bishop. They can also play rook takes g6, though. Let's keep the queen on. And instinct tells me to keep it on. I could also... No, I can't attack on h3. He just plays queen takes. Okay, queen h5. See, queen h5. He plays... Could play bishop g5, I suppose. But then I move my knight somewhere. h3 perhaps. And bishop takes, rook takes. He's going to have trouble guarding g6 and stopping my rooks from penetrating. So queen h5 here. Okay, now let's see. He took my queen. I take his queen, right? Okay. Did I move here, or am I still thinking? I'm still thinking. The question is, do I allow b5? I don't. Okay, e5. Pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes. I take with the pawn. It's going to take him a lot of work to attack that pawn on e5. He's got to play queen b8, bishop c8, and bishop c7. Let's see. Pawn takes. I can always take with the pawn too, but then he gets b5 in. Pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes, pawn takes. The only other move is like knight e3. What do I do if he plays b5? Well, the only way to stop it is to play a4. Let me see. Did he move here? He took that. This rook takes here. Okay. Now I have to bring the rook back to d1, and when he goes to the 7th rank, I play bishop d4. Okay. Knight c4, bishop d4. Actually, I can go pin him here. Wait, where's this bishop? I don't want to sit out on the wrong square. Rook here. Now he can play rook d8, rook takes, c4, rook d1 check, bishop e1 forced, rook takes, king up, and I have a simple win. So let's just pin him and be done with it. Okay, I haven't made up my mind here. E5. Or I could play a4, he plays a6. He's going to get b5 in. So what can he really do? Prepare the battery with queen b8, bishop c7, and or queen b8, bishop d8, and bishop c7, like if I delay playing e5? Well, one drawback with doing that when he puts the queen on b8 is he unprotects c6. And if I play a4, b6 does potentially weaken his queenside pawns to some new things. His bishops just aren't getting into play. Okay, a4, a6. I can play knight a6 or knight a3, attacking the pawn on a6. e5, let's see, let's make a decision. e5, pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes, pawn takes. Okay, I don't want to take with the queen, but I could. Queen takes, pawn takes. Now bishop c7, or d8, with the idea of bishop c7. The only way I can hold that pawn is if I get my knight in the game. And the moment he gets to c4, I'm going to drop that, and g3 will be weak. Okay, a4 it is. We'll slow play this. Okay, king f7. Now b3, forcing you to play knight d6. I trade rooks, activate my king, and it's over. Okay, bishop there. Okay, now where do I put my knight? Well, I can put him on h3 and threaten to g5 and a mate on f7. So let's try that. Knight h3 with the idea of where'd my knight come from? I think f4. I just want to make sure. Knight h3 also threatens bishop takes h6. Okay. Now we trade rooks. He has no entry squares for his king because my bishop covers d4. Right, no entry squares for the king. So I just centralize my king. He can attack the pawn. He can attack the pawn on a3 with it gets his knight to b5, but I'll just push it. Just centralize my king and no. This is a routine win. Bishop c5 dominating the knight. See? I mean, I know this pattern. I can't miss something like this. Okay, now king f2. The rest is easy. Your knight can't move. He's dominated. When he moves, he's going to get traded. How if I just start running this pawn up the board? e5 threatens e6, e7. A4, E6, King C6, King E4 as King can't approach. There's a pawn. And he played E5. Okay, well that takes squares away. If I play F5, he takes, I take, he gets a protected pass pawn, but I'm all crawling all over H5. Okay. There goes my pawn, got a queen. Well, yeah, stopped it. You can win my A pawn. Maybe. The moment you play King B3, I push B5. And my pawn is protected. And the B pawn is going to queen. Thank you. White won. Okay, so let's run through this one. Very interesting game. Didn't quite pan out the way I was talking about keeping those pawns on E3 and E4 because his A6 move was a weakening move, and I could have taken on A6 right here. But actually, I tempoed that. Now I took it. So I missed it the first time, but now I just win a pawn, and his chances were. I didn't want to activate his bishop, and F3 was just. Yeah, I played F3 here. I've covered all the other bases here. That's a good move. Bishop D4 made me think. See, it interferes with the idea of the queen coming back to C2 and guarding, but I figured that if rook F6, queen C2, rook H3, H3, queen G5, I'll just park the king on H2, and you can't get enough attackers on it. And just trading queens has just led to a quick loss. Could you have done anything else? Well, I think I had everything else covered. Yeah, I'm just up a pawn or two pawn, no, one pawn, and you've got two weak queenside pawns, and now the pin, and when you go back, dominate the knight and force a trade, and I'm two pawns up and going to win. Thank you so much for playing. You're getting better. Hopefully this game is toughening you up. Can only do that. Okay, so now we come back to what else do I have left? I have two games. Hooray. So I played F5. Got king there. Now I've got new squares here. And those squares are F5. So we're working on that one. So I can win a pawn with pawn takes, bishop takes. Let's see. Do I win a pawn with that? Wait, I gotta watch this game here. I'll come back. Okay, queen e6. What if I play knight g5? What do you do? I'm attacking your queen. I'm threatening knight f7 check. Mate. Knight g5. You move your bishop. I play knight f7 check. I think it's almost over here. Knight g5. What do you do? I'm attacking your queen and I'm threatening knight f7 check. I think this does it. Yeah. What's he do? Pawn take. You can't take the knight. He moves the queen. Knight f7 check is deadly. You play queen takes e3 check, but that doesn't do much good. That should do it. Okay, now I can win a pawn with pawn takes, g6. But you can also play bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, and then king takes. Then I bring the queen back to e2. That'll win the pawn, right? Let me look at my time on that. This one's 20 minutes, and I have 12 there. Okay, plenty of time. Okay, let's see. I want to play a move like knight e3 here, just to get that knight in the game. See if he plays pawn takes. I play knight takes f5 check. Knight e3. You can play g5. I don't think that helps him. So the question is, do I want to take on g6? Okay, g6 he could take with the bishop. I play bishop takes h5. Threatening queen g4. I really like the idea of getting my pieces in play. Okay, that game ended. I won that one. Come back to that in just a second. Knight e3. Also, in some positions, threatens to get into d5. If he plays g5, I'm still able to play pawn takes, pawn takes. I got to wait. Knight e3, g5, pawn takes, pawn takes. I've got a passed f pawn. I can play bishop takes, and I'm threatening to enter with my queen. Now knight e3 is a strong move. Knight e3. That's the only game left. Okay, let's back. I don't know if he's still here. Thanks. Okay. Let's bring this back all the way to the beginning. Okay. I thought he was going to play knight e6 and, save the tempo of h6 when I take. And I decided, well, okay, fine. Well, I expected knight e6 here. I expected this after knight e6, and I expected to take the bishop. So I didn't put the queen on c2. She came to e2. And I think the game is objectively even here. I think that's a good move. Didn't see it coming. I think that's probably the best move. Don't want to. And that was the best way not to take back with the bishop, even though you can trade another minor piece. Otherwise, I just have this annoying pin, and your bishop is very good. And that was probably a good move. I think this is forced. Otherwise, I have to go back knight f3 and repeat the position. Now I'm just got to try for the f5 push. And I was worried about that e-file opening up. Just preventative maintenance ahead of time. And there it was going to open, and there you're on it. But fortunately, the knight on g2 covers the bishop on e3. And I'm not really planning a discovery, but I am. It's more like to get the rook in play, but it does have a useful threat. And I contemplate, and I bring the knight. Whoops, it's his move. He's trying to get rid of my knight. Okay, well, fine. I've got to clear a square for it. So first I take your pawn. I'm trying to clear e3 for it, get a knight into f5. Of course, the bishop takes. I can also bring the knight into d5, and knight on e3 to d5, and then cover b5. Let me finish off this other game. He's got 447. Okay, now I can play knight d5, and I'm attacking the queen, and I maintain the pressure. I'm also attacking b6. And h5 remains weak, so knight d5 is the move here. Okay, so now let's see. Finish off this one. h5, inviting you to play g5. I think you should have played g5 here, but I get queen f5 check in for what it's worth. And I was contemplating, at some point getting knight h6 in, but just keeping the stuff on. Now I found knight h3, which plans knight g5, and now there's going to lose the queen to stop mate. So thanks so much for playing. I'll close that one up and finish off my last game. Look what it did. It go close one game, and it messes you up and gives you this. This is ridiculous, chess.com. It didn't close out the game I tried to close out. Okay, how do I get out of this? Well, here's how I get out. I exit live chess. No, I don't exit live chess. I refresh. No, it came back. No, I got it back somehow. Don't ask me how. Okay, let's try and close the right one out. Okay, that one's over. Good. Now, okay. Now b6 is weak. h5 is weak. I didn't even give up a pawn to do this. So imagine I take the pawn on b6 first. But he has to move his queen somewhere. Of course, I might not even take the pawn on b6. I may take the pawn at h5. I think the pawn at h5 is more valuable because it exposes his king. Bishop takes h5. If he takes, I take. What am I threatening? If he plays b5, might have rushed that move. Let's see. Just want to take a quick look. No, he's back on the pawn on e4. No, my move is correct. Okay. Knight d5, queen b8. Okay. I have 18 minutes. He has 3.5. So once he's used up his 3.5, he gets 30 seconds a move. Although he should be okay. We're getting a more simple game. I just have to devise a winning strategy. See, there's two pawns on the take. And if I take the one on b6 with my knight on c4, he's still got two pawns on the take because I'm on the pawn on a5, or on a6 also. If he plays, so knight c4 takes b6. If he plays bishop d8, attacking my knight can, no, my queen can just take on a6. Now, bishop takes h5, bishop takes, queen takes h5. His king is weak, but I can't get at it right now. I will have a queen check on g4. Need the knight into f5. Now that pawn's not good. And taking on b6 also, look at his pawn structure is just getting very weak here. So knight takes b6 is the move. And we let him think. Knight from c4 takes b6. And we let him think. And the simul is now hitting the 3-hour mark for the video. So, good 3-hour game. 90-30 rocks. It's a good time control. It's approximately what you're going to find in the real world. Okay, so now h6 is weak, h5 is weak. I have a hole on f5. Black has some problems here. Not to mention the time constraint. So this type of game shows why the knights are better than bishops, and it's okay to give up that bishop in the opening and not have to fumble around with it like I used to, letting it sit on c1, then putting it on, playing b3, bishop b2, rook a1, bishop back to c1, and white doesn't do much with the bishops in this game, in this opening. Hey, what can I say? Gatakomsky was playing something similar to this in the U.S. Championship. There he moved while I was away from the computer. So, let's see. What did he move? He played queen a7, guarding his a-pawn, but that leaves the h-pawn free. So, I'll probably take it. I can always if he plays bishop d8 coming up, I can always play. Well, I'm going to think about this one here. I mean, it's a free pawn. And it'll put me 2 pawns up, but it's not that simple if he well, I can't play. I mean, if I anchor the knight with a5, that pawn will fall to his knight on c6. So I just have to bring my knight back in the game. I should be okay with bishop takes h5, but I'm away from the computer for a moment. Since this is my last game, I can give it my full attention. And fortunately, I have a fair amount of time here, so on my clock, so I can maintain okay. And had I played 10 games, I would have lost 3 by now. You guys want to play me, get a long game. If I blunder, you get to figure out how to beat me. Sometimes it's real easy. I keep making blunders. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch, they say, I need to get back to the game in a moment. So let's see. I'm up 1 pawn. I can win a second one. If he attacks the knight with bishop d8, I can retreat it. He can also push c4 and pin it. That's one reason I want to rush moves. I have 15 minutes left. See, like for instance, bishop takes h5. What if he plays c4? Now my knight's pinned. Now bishop c5 is a problem. I can play knight c8. Knight c8 attacks his queen. Knight c8. Queen, where's he put his queen? Queen d7. Okay, I can play knight takes e7. I can do a mass liquidation here. Knight takes e7. Knight takes e7. Knight takes e7. Queen takes e7. Bishop takes h5. He takes my on h5. I'm ahead 2 pawns and a queen and pawn ending. My king is a little bit exposed, so that's should be winning, but if you can find a simpler way where you don't have to deal with all the potential checks, uh, you try to take that route. But that doesn't mean that it's not a bad choice to go that way. It simplifies a lot. You know, he's going to play c4. If I take on h5, well, let's look at it. I have an interesting move here. Bishop takes h5, bishop takes h5, queen takes h5. He plays c4. Now I play queen g4 check. He moves his king where? To f7. Now, of all things, I can play queen d7. That pins his bishop, so he doesn't want to put his king on f8 or on f7. So let's look through this. Bishop takes, queen takes, c4, queen g4 check, king f8. Now then I have queen c8 check, and I win his knight. Unless he plays knight d8. But then let's see, bishop takes 8, I forgot this line already. Bishop takes h4, bishop takes h4, c4, queen g4 check, king h6. Let's put him on h6, get him out of the way. Now I don't have a check. Now if I play queen d7, I'm happy if he plays queen takes c8. I mean, not queen takes c8. Queen takes d7, because I take back with my knight on d7. My knight will be on d7. I'm attacking his bishop on e7. 2 pawns up. So how does he keep the queens off on the board after queen d7? Queen d7 attacks his knight on c6. He can play bishop c5 check. Yeah, I can do that. King g2. Bishop takes b6. And then I play queen takes c6. And he kept the queens on. And I'm threatening the pawn on f6 with check. So that here with the minor piece on the board is it's a little brighter. That's an interesting thing I'm finding here. Bishop takes h5, bishop takes h5, queen takes h5, c4, queen g4 check, king h6. If he goes to the second rank, he gets pinned on e7, queen d7. Now he's able to play bishop c5 check, king g2, bishop takes b6, but my queen takes on c6. Now I'm attacking his bishop, and his bishop goes back to d8, and then let's see, does it go back to d8? He's got this diagonal open. What if he puts the bishop on g1? Threatening queen f2. That's a good point. See, these things get complicated. Look, I'm running out of time. Bishop takes, queen takes. My tactics suck. How did I get so high rated? Well, I know how to play the position, and I'll figure it out. Bishop takes, queen takes. c4, queen g4 check, king h6, queen c7, or queen d7. Okay, now bishop c5 check, king g2, bishop takes b6, queen takes c6, bishop g1. Fly in the ointment. There's the fly in the ointment. Wow. So you calculate carefully. So that gives The other move I was looking at was knight c8. Knight c8 attacks his queen. He moves his queen. I liquidate on e7. Knight takes, knight takes, knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes h5, bishop takes h5, queen takes h5. Now you could play queen d7 to keep my queen out of g4. And then I can just put my queen back on d2, and I'm attacking the pawn on a5. Yeah, knight c8 is the liquidating move. Knight c8. Well, let's double check. I still have, what, 8 minutes? Knight c8. Knight c4 is a possibility, too. I like knight c8. I'll go into queen ending. Sometimes you have to play queen endings. Knight c8. Okay. h5 isn't going anywhere. I'll get it in a move or two. But that was interesting. The line I was giving, a bishop takes h5, him playing c4, but he has that out, that bishop c5 check. And maybe I missed something better in there for white. I don't know. I determined this would win. I'm just trying to find a simpler way, and I didn't find it. Normally, I'm not down to 8 minutes with 4 moves, to hit move 40. It comes from playing a simul. I'm losing minutes here, minutes in every game somewhere. Okay, queen c7, as expected. Now he's attacking my knight. So I take his bad dark squared bishop off. And now one thing I can do is keep the knights on. I don't have to trade the knights. His queen isn't really doing anything on c7. And if I take on h5, I determined the knight takes c7 would win, but I could take on h5 next move. If I get a nice pass pawn, or an extra pass pawn in this thing early, that could be pretty decisive. Why don't you take the knight? What am I missing? Oh, I was on your queen. No, I didn't take your queen. I missed the queen being gone. Well, I didn't want the queen. Okay, so okay. Oops. What's wrong? What's wrong here? Why can't I take that? Okay, knight takes. I guess I'm a piece up. I didn't even see his queen was hanging. Okay, so check. Didn't even see the queen was hanging, but I don't need to take it. Okay, so that allows a queen check. Trading queens, getting the game over. Do you want to play knight e3 and try to mate you? Knight e3, threatens knight f5 check. Knight e3. You play knight e7. Well, let him find the move. Like knight e7, I can still play queen check. Let him find knight e7. Okay, knight e7. Or knight e2. What if he plays queen h3? Well, I play queen g4 check. Okay, or knight f5 check. Maybe winning is king, because I can play queen g4 after that. You'll have to trade queens. It's like the idea of improving the position of my pieces. The d5 outpost was fine, but f5 is powerful. He did find knight e7. Okay, good move. But unfortunately, it's not enough. I'm a piece and 2 pawns ahead, so the queens are coming off. I'll take back with the bishop. Little pre-move magic. Okay. Now, I'm threatening to trade your knight off. Okay, so there I got the outpost I wanted. Knight f5 check. Now if he plays king f7, I put the bishop on h5 and pin it. Now the knight comes off. Actually, the knight doesn't come off. You're going to get zugzwanged and lose your knight. You run out of pawn moves and you lose your knight. I'm not going to trade it. I'm going to make you lose it. You have 2 pawn moves to make, and then you move your king and give up your knight. So it looks like you push a5, I push c4, and you give me your knight. I run you out of pawn moves, see? There's no stalemate in there with king e6 because you have d7 available. Oh, wow. That's good practice this Simul. And I hope the video played. Hope the video worked. Did on the test. The voice bars never moved. So, as soon as I guess he's going to resign. He hasn't resigned yet. He's got a minute and 15. Okay, white one, thank you so much for the game. Let's take a quick look through. Really had to work with this system, but it wins. I mean, it doesn't win. It can be won. You can win with it. Even as these things go, there are maneuvers I've uncovered. The first 11 moves are straightforward, and often that's my 12th. It's good to have that bishop on that h7 b1 diagonal. It just pins that pawn and makes it a nuisance. And here I decided not to go for c4, but go with this maneuver knight h2, trying to induce h5 at some point because it creates a weakness that can be attacked. And there, got it. Now the idea is a battery with bishop on f3 and queen on e2, driving back where he came. He's trying to defend that h5 square. I ignore the queen trade because I want the battery. But although if I didn't have this option, I don't mind a queen trade. My knights are just as good as his bishops. And we play an ending and see what happens. Could be a draw, you know, I don't know. Uh, Creating weaknesses. And I didn't even see. But let's well, first off, where did he have to put his queen? He had to put it on b7, right? But let's look at this line here. Let's see. Uh, bishop takes, queen here, c4, queen g4 check, king here, queen d7, bishop c5 check, king g2, bishop takes, queen takes. Wait a minute. Yeah. Now bishop here. Okay. And just the prospect of this coming down here, I have queen takes check. That covers it. That covers f2. Yeah, this was possible. It just, what have I done? I've won 3 pawns. I just wasn't, I kind of stopped my analysis bishop g1, and it just didn't feel right. Now let's see, knight e7. Stop queen e2 check, or queen f2 check. The threat is mate and 2 here. Yeah, this probably wins. Let me see. Can you see what I am analyzing here? It's explained on video I made. Oh, somebody watching says he can't see it. Well, anyway, it was 36. Bishop takes h5. Bishop takes h5. 37. Queen takes h5. c4. 38. Queen g4 check. King h6. 39. Queen d7. Bishop c5 check. King 40. King g2. 40. King g2. Bishop takes b6. 41. Queen takes c6. Bishop g1. All explained on video. Anyway, thanks for playing. Thanks for watching the video. Take care. All right, and thanks everyone for watching. My first 5-0 score.